Hello and welcome to Noni, Yanga's flagship talk show where we discuss all the hot topics. Today we take a look at the rise of black British music, and with criticism from MPs, is there really a correlation between drill music and knife crime? Joining me today, twins and radio DJs Tights and Kay, and social media star Esther Falana. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
First twins we've had on the show.
Yeah, I feel special. Yes, I feel special.
Well, so far this year has been huge for black music in the UK, from Stormzy winning Best Male Artist at the Brits to Afrobeats taking over the charts. The black British music scene is well on the rise, so black British artists are finally getting the recognition they deserve in the mainstream. But why has it taken so long? Esther, you know, I listened to some popular urban radio stations, and is it me, or is there something now about it just being tune after tune after tune? You know all the artists, I can't name them all, but it's just like, you know, there's that my ting from Barkid, there's Stormzy, Krypton Conan, but literally, even when I was in Nigeria, I heard their music. So I know there has been successful black artists before, but there's something about now. What is it?
I don't know. I think, I believe that Afrobeats have played a big part in it. You know, the Afro mainstream music industry in Africa coming to the UK and collaborating with artists in the UK play a big part in the success as well. I believe as well it's our time, you know, it's our time, it's our season where we're supposed to shine, because it's not just musically we're shining in other areas such as sports. You know, you've got likes of Anthony Joshua, who's a Nigerian athlete who boxes and he's doing amazing. You know, you've got footballers that are doing well. So I think that musically, I think it's just our time. It's been long overdue as well. So I feel like, as well as that, people like American artists like Drake coming to the UK, and you can tell that Drake is a big supporting.
Exactly. Who's doing that song with Skepta at the moment?
I think it's Wizkid.
No, there's another one, an American rapper, and
A$AP Rocky.
A$AP Rocky, that's
amazing.
another good example.
So I think everyone is just recognising UK music right now.
It really is our time. Girls, you're DJs. Talk to me about your music career and how, you know, this British scene really has dominated all charts, not just urban but mainstream.
Everywhere. I feel like it's like everyone wants a bit of Britain now. Like everyone wants a bit of our UK rap, UK grime. I just think it's the in thing right now, and I think Americans love it. Everyone's just loving it.
It's taken a long time to get there, but I think now we're there, we've just got so much more to bring. And I think it's not only because it's playing in commercial now, it's everywhere, even on urban stations, big stations,
mainstream
and
stations,
even small stations as well. It's
taken over the world.
When we talk about black artists or black music, how would you define it, Esther? Because there's always been a black artist, isn't there? Is it grime? Is it drill? Is it rap? Or is it just a black person who's successful musically?
You see, when someone says a black artist, I believe it's someone that represents us today. You know, I feel like, yes, you're right, we've had a lot of black artists in the past, you know, that, you know, can sing, that can rap, and, you know, we like their music and we say, yeah, we'll buy their album, etc. But I feel like the black artists that are of today are people that everybody or somebody can relate to, and that is why everyone is cheering it on. Exactly. You know, a lot of us, unfortunately, come from a less fortunate background. So a lot of rappers today speak on where they've come from, which allow a lot of other young people and a lot of upcoming artists to relate and say, yes, like, so wow, we can rap like this. I can express my struggles. I can express what I go through, what I see, and I feel like that's what's winning. Because one thing about the UK, we like realness. Like, it's got to be real.
It's got to be genuine. You're right, though. Tights and Kay, do you find that sometimes with these successful artists, we're talking about, you know, grime really is the soundtrack of the streets. Do you find that sometimes when they make it, they can slip away from that? You know, we were talking beforehand about this with the producers, and Dizzy Rascal's name came up, and there's like, well, kind of, he made it successful, and then he kind of went a bit white, a bit whitewashed. Can that happen to some of our most successful artists?
I feel like it's sad at the same. I think it is sad.
But I feel like now it's not like that as much. I feel like now it's like it's cool to do this. Like you don't really want to go into the whole trying to be mainstream and trying to like sell to everyone. So because I feel like everybody wants to take a bit of us now, if that makes sense.
Rather than giving it
them. So I don't think so as much.
It still happens though.
It still happens. Like for example, like Tiny Temper. I know.
I was just about to say.
He's completely changed now. Like
360'd.
So sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do.
I think it depends on where your heart's at as well. If you're doing it for what you love to do, then you stay with who you really started with.
Yeah.
Do you think you can sell out then, Esther? Like, do you think Tiny Temper?
I think he's sold
Does
out.
he
I
really?
think that's just my personal
Why?
opinion, because I feel like when you look at, when you look at where he started and where he is now, his music has changed. He's not the same rapper that he once was, the person that we fell in love with.
Yeah,
like, obviously, don't get it twisted, he most probably has opened up doors for other audience to like him and love him. And
with
obviously,
Disturbing London,
thank
his
you,
record
exactly.
label.
But I just feel like the person that we once knew, you know, it's not there no more. Like, he's a bit, even in terms of his fashion,
But
like,
then at the
it's
same
all completely
time,
changed.
different, isn't it?
Very different. Do you know what I mean?
Quirky.
Yeah, but at the same time, it might be he's on his own path and he needed to find himself. And
Which is
maybe
true,
he's found himself in this genre and that's what he was supposed to do.
Do you kind of feel like that happens with the mainstream? Remember Mobos? I don't know, you girls are all a bit younger than me, just a little bit from you, Esther. But I remember there was a time nobody watched it. You had to go late, Channel 4, late on BBC Three or wherever to find the Mobos. But now the Mobos are almost like the Brits.
Yeah, it is.
See, the thing about Tiny Temper, let's use Stormzy as an example. Now, we're all watching Stormzy grow, develop, and become very successful. I don't see him changing. I still believe that he's staying
He
true.
did the track with Ed Sheeran.
Exactly, he did, but he's still staying true to himself. Like, you can still relate and say that's Stormzy. You see, with Tiny Temper, I feel like he is allowed himself to adapt to the society that he wants to be in. You know, the people that he's around. Now, I don't want to go indulge in it too deep, but I just believe that he's almost made himself. He's no longer who he once was. I feel like, I don't want to say he's forgotten his roots, but I feel like he's almost forgotten his roots and he's adapted to it as the environment that he's in now.
He's been whitewashed.
Whitewashed, yeah, that's the word. Whitewashed, yes.
I wouldn't say Tiny Temper's whitewashed, but I know some people say he is. But do you think that, you know, going back to like the Mobos and the Brits and how the Mobos was kind of dying, you know, they couldn't get anybody to fly in. And now the Brits have almost, you know, emulated what the Mobos was. Do you think that's because being black is trending, being black is cool? So therefore, at the time when Tiny was coming up, it wasn't so cool. So he had to reinvent.
Yeah, I do.
Whereas now there's a time for Stormzy and that's it. So he can stay true to himself.
I believe so. I completely agree with that. Yeah, I do agree with that completely.
Who else are kind of upcoming artists who we're celebrating? I know you're quite close with Krept and Conan, aren't you?
Yeah.
But you know, who else is out there who you think, come on, you know, these people are doing their props, not just Stormzy, it's not just Stormzy.
Do you know, I think as well, Skepta, you know, a lot of people like to say, a lot of people feel like Skepta's been whitewashed. I personally, some people do. Some people do. I've had conversations. They be like, "Oh, Skepta's changed. He's a bit," but I feel like no. Like, I listen to his music.
Raw.
He's raw. Yeah. Like, I listen to his music and I still feel like, he's still the same guy.
And he's paid his dues.
Thank you. I do believe so. But then, when I have conversations with people in the industry, I feel like, you know, I get wind that he's not really. But I think no.
Before we go to the break, I've got to quickly ask you, Tights and K. You know, we're all females here. Some female black artists. There's not enough of us.
No, there is.
But who? Give me some names. Who should we be repping?
Banks is amazing.
Okay.
Lady Lee.
Steph London. Steph London, of course.
I think Steph London's doing really well, but I think Miss Banks is not really the way she's not recognised. She's not recognised.
That's what you always say.
I've been saying that Miss Banks is actually one of my friends. Like, I feel like she's doing really well.
Okay, that's a cue. Bring her on next episode. Still to come, we take a look at the debate surrounding drill music and knife crime in London. See you after the break. Welcome back to Noni. Coming up, we look at the ways rising knife crime in London has been linked to drill music. But first, let's get straight back to our discussion. Esther, I know you probably didn't, but I kind of cringed at Stormzy's Brits performance. I know. I think. Was it raining or there was raining? And then he was like, "What about Grenfell?" I cried for Grenfell. It's not that. But to be honest, it was all over the press the next day. Theresa May even came out and, you know, answered him. So even though I thought it was cringy, there is some power in these black artists. You know, people are watching what they're doing, what they're saying. If certain things are happening, you know, the media want to document it. Why do you think that is?
Do you know what it is? I feel like, as I said earlier, that as black artists now, we're being recognised, and we're being recognised everywhere, even with politics and politicians.
You're being recognised.
Thank you, but we're being recognised. So everything that we say is being noted down. And Stormzy's not the first person to have something to say to Theresa May. Dave did. He made a song, and he made that song. He made his thoughts and how he felt directly.
Remind
to her.
us if you can.
I can't remember what he said, but he asked about
like a really long song.
Literally directed to her. He spoke about Grenfell, you know, knife crime, a lot of things. Like he addressed everything that was on his chest and got it out. And I respect him for that. And I feel like because we're doing so well and we've got so many young people looking up to us, and you know, right now, the youth is our future. So, you know, right now, politicians are looking at the youths, are looking at artists. That what do they say? What's going on in the young society today? Because you know, music is where you're going to get it from, you know, for you to understand what is going on outside of, you know, number 10. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's a really important point. And going back to what we were saying about some artists selling out, I don't want to call Tiny Temper a sellout. He's probably heard of the show. He knows Esther. So I don't want him to think that we're kind of saying that he's white. But if we are talking about certain people selling out, you know, and taking a different path, is that not a good thing then? You know, to show black boys and black girls, young ones coming up, that you know, I do like this, but you can go into fashion. You can, you know, be on the front row at London Fashion Week with your white friends, and it's not a problem.
I personally don't think there's anything wrong with it if you're not losing your
forgetting about who you
really are. So I think there's no issue with it. I just think sometimes we're too fast to say, oh, they're changing or not the same person that first started, and we try to say like they should just be in the same spot. But it's like, why not try something different?
White artists do it all the time. Remember Pink? Remember when Pink was an R&B star?
Pink has changed so much. She was rock and roll to like doing pop. She's done it all, and no one's really said anything to Pink. So why are we so hard on ourselves to say you have to be like this and you have to stay like that forever? Do you know what I mean?
We can be too judgmental, maybe.
I think that there's nothing wrong with change. I feel like change is good. Change is positive. But you've got to also understand that, it's good to change, but it's also not good to lose your identity.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it falls under. You've got to understand a lot of people looked up to Tiny Temper growing up. They could relate to Tiny Temper, who was that young man that grew up, that was from, I can't remember what ends he's from, but he was from South London. Do you know what I mean? He grew up in a less fortunate area, just like a lot of young boys are today.
He was kind of the first to break out of this new
thing. So for you now to go along, you know, to grow, become successful, which is good. All props to him. I'm not knocking him. But then for us not to be able to relate to you anymore,
stay true to yourself.
I feel like that's where the line's a bit blurry, because I feel like a lot of people can't relate to him as they used to.
What is it, guys, about this Stormzy thing? Stormzy in particular. Stormzy. Because even Jeremy Corbyn tried to get him for like a Labour convention. He's everywhere. Everyone wants a piece of him. What is it about Stormzy? Because some may say, dark skin, tall. He's just a stereotype. He's a token for what white establishment, white mainstream want to put out there. Because there are other talented youths and musicians, but there's something about him that they've, you know, clung on to, and they all want a piece of.
He's relatable, I think, and we've seen him grow.
Like, and I think we love when we see people grow. I think that's the most important thing. Like, you know, when you see someone just come out of nowhere, sometimes you don't feel like you can relate.
To me, he came out of nowhere.
To me, I feel like I really got to see him.
You're younger than me, so maybe. Because I kind of like Stormzy, the king of grime, really. I know about 5 more people. But some people said, no, Jules, really, he is the guy, and he is the one that people look up to.
And he's interactive. He talks to his fans, and that's what I think everyone likes, especially on social media. And I think he's the first one. He does it a lot. I think he's the first actual rapper
person to really start the whole thing, and I feel like everyone does it now.
No, I think he's not the first.
He's not the first.
I'd say that other rappers have interacted with their fans, but I think as well, like Stormzy, he can perform and wear a night tracksuit, for example. You know,
Adidas.
Like these are like, young boys can go out to the shop and buy these things. Whereas, you know, a lot of people go out on stage and they're wearing expensive things that none of us like.
But Esther, why has it taken so long? What is it specifically? We can't just say the Wakanda thing. There must be something about the timing. And sometimes the timing can even be suspicious. But there is something about now where you're literally everywhere and you can always hear a black British artist.
You know, there's that saying that how God's time is the best time, for example. I just think it's timing. We weren't recognised before. We are now recognised. So anyone who's talented in any area, in any genre, shine. Do what you've got to do. Put yourself out there.
Now, staying on the subject of music, drill as a genre is being blamed for violence in the capital. Drill can be described as a trap subgenre, which is defined by its violent lyrics. Former Home Secretary Amber Rudd described it as music that encourages and glamorizes violence, and the repercussions are deadly. But does drill music encourage knife crime, or is it yet another scapegoat? Esther, of course, I'm going to come to you first, because this is a really big topic, and I suppose we've got to be careful, because all of us, you know, we have young male friends, and of course violence doesn't just occur in the male community, it also occurs in the female community too. Yeah. But we've seen the headlines, we've heard the criticisms from the MPs. What is it about drill grime music and its relation to knife crime? Do you think it's a fair correlation?
I think it is a fair correlation. I was quite, as much as I've bigged him up on the show before, Lethal B, but I was quite disappointed because Lethal B made a statement that he felt like, I think on Twitter, that drill music had no correlation to the knife crime or the violence. Now, I'm not saying all drill music is correlated to knife crime, but I believe that predominantly a handful of drill music is related to knife crime.
It promotes it.
It promotes it. It also, there's confessions. If you listen to some of the lyrics, like, I feel like for him to stand up and say, do you know what, you know, ignore what, forget what the police are doing, you keep fighting through, like, I get you're encouraging those who have no correlation to the knife crime, but you also need to address those young men who are making music.
So you think it's irresponsible?
Yeah, I think it's very irresponsible. You need to address those young men that are making music, who are confessing to knife crimes, who are confessing to gun crimes, who are saying that they killed someone and they heard their mum cry. I think it's disgusting. God, and as a mother myself, who's got a young child, who is raising this child in this same world that we live in, it breaks my heart, because I don't want to raise my child in such a world where music, people are now even, before, at least if crimes were committed, I'm not saying at least it's a good thing, but when crimes were committed in the past, you wouldn't hear on it. There was silence. But now young men are brave enough to put it on a track. And I think it's disgusting.
God, Esther, I've known you for how long now? I've never actually seen you speak so passionately on something. No, so it shows how important this is, girls. And it's really important what Esther said, and I want to pick up from that, because if you're talking about drill, and you know, you see the videos, they're all in hooded masks, and they are talking about shanking, you know, doing drive-bys, and you see the weapons in the video. How far away is that, Tights and K, from Stormzy saying, I can put you in the boot of my car? You know, we all sing along to it. Our kids sing along to it. But how far away is that from glamorizing and showing the knife, the shank, and the gun?
It's true. To be honest, I don't really know, because I don't have too much of an opinion, because I don't really listen to the music too much. But I do understand completely what Esther's saying, and I agree with it totally. But then I also have to think that you are your own person, and you can think alone, so you can't really say music is going to make you act a certain type of way, because
it can influence your own to a certain extent. You have your own mind and your own body.
Can you understand why some would say that, you know, this is kind of, you're trying to sensationalize something that doesn't have any meaning? Because I think, you know, in the past couple of years, there's only been 1 or 2 people that have been arrested, and that was because of a direct correlation between drill music and knife crime.
So you could say a lot of people are talking metaphorically. They're not really going to do anything, okay? But because you know, music is a way of expressing yourself.
Of course,
you know,
of course.
You might think it, but you may not do anything. But when you look at these videos are speaking. They're in correlation to what they're saying.
Some of them are actually quite scary. I've
very
seen them.
scary.
They
like, you know,
scary.
I'm scared. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm even scared. I get
scared.
scared. Like, you know, masks on. Like, I get scared walking from my house to my flat. If I saw someone in a mask, I'll be scared, because you see these music videos where people are wearing masks. You see them even holding knives that are big, that they say, I've stabbed, and they will say it in their lyrics, I stabbed you with this. Or, you know.
It's true. So, you know, Tights and K, so why would you be wearing a mask and showing the knife if you have no intention of using it?
Yeah, it's true. But like, I was thinking that though, there's other like music types as well, like rock music. We could say the same with that.
Of course,
like,
of course. You could say that it does make you want to, you know, go out and get high and have an overdose. And some people probably do.
So I think for us to really focus on like drill and trap music and all stuff like that, we have to then think about other genres. We have to go into it's not fair just to focus on that, because there's other music types that are like that, and we don't ever really speak upon it. We're just so focused on
that's a good point. That's a good point.
But the problem is as well, I get what you're saying, and I completely agree, but we've also got to remember the society that we live in. These things are happening. People are getting stabbed. People are getting
Although
shot.
Again, you know, there are arguments as well, Esther, that suggest that, you know, some of the statistics are a little bit distorting, you know, that you know, we may see it on the front cover of a paper, an 18-year-old boy was stabbed to death at a party, and oh, it's such an epidemic. But then you creep outside of London, and the statistics are pretty much the same thing. But, you know, they're sensationalizing it. And I don't think, you know, I know it's still wrong, and I don't want to even suggest that it's not high enough, because it is too high. But I suppose we do have to be very careful, and we do have to look at other genres, because of course at Glastonbury, the kind of music they're promoting there, and the amount of ODs, people die a lot, but we're not necessarily seeing this. And I think Stormzy or Lethal B mentioned this before, didn't they? That why are you not focusing on Glastonbury and taking the, you know, the police down there?
If you do compare how much times we've talked about drill music having an impact on sound in comparison to like rock or something like that, it's completely different, because we focus so much on drill music having such a problem. So it's just like, why are we focusing so much on one when there's so much issues?
I think it's also it's the colour of our skin as well.
100%.
The fact that we are black people, black men, black women, and we're representing a culture and a culture that's never been represented or seen, you know, in such a big light. Definitely. I feel like it's daunting on a lot of people.
So we kind of all agree that it's quite harmful, pretty dangerous. You know, get into a proper record studio booth and make some lovely music. Well, that's it from me, Juliana Olayinka, and my fantastic guests, Tyson K and Esther Falana. Don't forget, guys, Noni's now online wherever you go in the world. Wherever you are in the world, go to www.yangatv.com to check out every single episode. Join me next time for more Noni Chat. Goodbye.